We are live. So, this is the first iteration of Meet the Artist. Probably going to rework that name in the future, but the thought process for what we're doing right now is to meet the IRL artists, the physical artists that are in the space. Now, when I say the space, I'm a Cardano guy, but I'm also a blockchain person. And I recognize that the Web3 world is expanding. I myself am a physical artist, so I try and do my paintings and do my work. And there's a pretty big bridge to gap between the physical world and the Web3 world. And when we say Web3, I'm talking about a very basic explanation, which is if it's associated with the blockchain, if there are NFTs involved, if there are digital twins involved, where your physical asset has NFC reading chip, something of that ilk. What we want to do right now is start sharing that journey with anybody else that's exploring the Web3 space who's a physical artist. Today, I will bring Poetonic on, who I met in the depths of the old money world, and we are live. So, with no further ado, here is Poetonic. Pronounce that for us and make sure I got that right.
Yeah, so it's like you said, it's Poetonic,
Okay.
Poetonic. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Poe, what do you go by Poe when you're in conversation with talking to somebody, or is it?
People call me Poetonic. They shorten it a little bit, but feel free to use, whatever seems right,
I can do that.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
So who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself as an artist. You are a physical artist. What does that mean?
Well, actually, physical pieces are really not a small part. They're still a big part, but small in the sense that most of my work is actually digital to begin with. So, for example, when I did season 5, season 5 was basically a collage work of digital photographs. So I had to create the photographs first, which I did here in the streets of Cork, and then I printed them out, and I basically made collage work out of other photographs that I printed out, and other elements such as newspaper, books, and just really what I had on hand, basically, right? And that's like what I kind of do now is I bridge the gap between the kind of like the physical and the digital. And that's why I happen to like Web3 a lot, because it allows me to do that like really seamlessly and easily, although it's more work because I have to like market it and make content and participate in these popularity contests on Twitter, right? Because that's what it's all about. And but I enjoy it and having fun with it, and so yeah, most of my work is actually digital, but oftentimes I modify it in the real world only to digitize it again later on to actually bring it on the blockchain. And in this case, it's Cardano, of course.
Okay. How long have you been an artist? Like, do you call yourself an artist? Do you still have an IRL job and you do art on the side, or what's your
I don't think I have imposter syndrome anymore. I just yeah, I don't mind calling myself an artist, but only recently though, because before I would call myself more of a commercial photographer, because that's what I do like for a living. I photograph products and make advertisements for agencies and companies, mostly working with jewelers and jewelry stores here in Cork. And yeah, and I really wanted to take this medium of photography and do something that was really a lot more personal and meaningful.
Sure.
And bring that to and publish it in the Web3 space. Because that's really how I see NFTs. I see it as a means to publish my work, and like I might mint a piece and put it on sale, but it might not sell. I see like kind of like a pro bono thing to publishing. But what I really want to do is actually have the artwork somewhere that's not on my hard drive, that's not a physical piece, on a technology that's going to stay for like a really, really long time. So
Sure.
when eventually when blockchains will be indexed so that you could really search and find things, you would look up, Poetonic, and you would have like all the collections I made, and they're going to be there probably forever.
Yeah.
So that's my whole like intent, is to I see it as a storage room of some sort.
Yeah.
And it's like a storage room of basically my subconscious mind, because that's kind of like where my work comes from. I can't fully explain it, right?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about too. I don't want to over relate, but my father was a decoy carver back in the year or back in the '90s. Carved like
Mhm.
folk craft of making decoys. The only collection I have is 3x5 cards that he every single one that he did, he would take to what show it went to, little history, who he sold it to, with a photograph. That doesn't exist in the '90s. It exists now, and it gives us what you're talking about is exactly that. You look up the policy ID and you can see all of your work, and you can track down where it's at, who owns it now. It'd be impossible for me to figure out that from my father's history. So your children or your whoever's following you can say, I know who that is. So I'm gonna give a quick
Yeah,
shout out. I
yeah,
forget we're on chat too. So Tim Kavanaugh, Liam Conway, and Tamakat, Dilly Cooks just dropped in. So hello to everybody and thank you. We'll keep an eye on that chat.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see it as as a legacy building. Something that you leave behind.
yeah,
It's really interesting because most of what I photograph people. Is basically remains of people who want to leave their mark. Like, for example, like the
okay,
sloppy post that I'm working on now is basically photographs of bad graffiti in random streets of Cork, and
okay,
and I don't know, for some reason I shoot what I'm attracted to, and I appreciate even though it looks really ugly, it's still like I relate to that intent of wanting to leave your mark somewhere, right?
okay.
Because in the end we're all mortal, we're all gonna disappear. There's no magic pill that's gonna make you live forever, right?
You're right.
So yeah, it's all about leaving your mark and being yourself, being true to yourself, and saying whatever the fuck you want to say.
Gotcha. Yeah, and speaking of that, your bio, I asked you to give me some information, tell me what to put in the description so anyone reading it, but obeying your only alien impulses, exploring the ways in which seemingly random disordered elements can be weaved together to create something unique and meaningful. I think you just explained all of that. Is there like, where'd you come up with just that as you? Like, that's how you describe yourself. Tell me more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It took me many years to like get to those two sentences, right? Because I
Yeah.
think as an artist in the beginning, you're searching for something. You're kind of like a fisherman that's going fishing like for ideas, right?
Okay.
And the idea, the better idea, the better the outcome, in my opinion, right? And it takes time and patience to figure out, who you are and what you want to say. But once you do figure it out, I think you have a real clear path in front of you where you can basically express yourself naturally and
Sure.
without any like obstacles in the way, basically, right?
Yeah.
So that's the purpose. It took me a while to figure that out, because um, it's a lot of reflection on who I am and what I like. Why am I breathing the air coming through my lungs? Why am I here? Why am I me and not him? It's
Yeah.
all these questions like mixed together, and in the end, I kind of like use art to also figure out figure that out. You know, it's a lot about, it has a lot to do with identity, right?
Yeah, I hear you on that. No, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. You mentioned that you said it a couple of times, and that you're from Cork, and the only Cork I know is a very small place. Sorry, I couldn't let
Yeah.
that dad joke go. Where is that in the world? Where's Cork?
Well, actually, I was born and raised in California from
Okay.
1989 to 2008. Um, and I grew up in the Western states of America, and then in 2008
Okay.
I moved back to Europe, to France, because my parents are French,
Okay.
and I basically traveled to Asia and other countries in Europe, and I had the opportunity to come and work in Ireland and stay with my girlfriend. So I jumped on that,
Yeah.
and eventually I landed in a small city, Cork. It's actually the second largest city in Ireland. The first being Dublin, and the second one being Cork. There's only
Okay.
100,000 people. It's still the second largest
Second largest
city in
city.
Ireland.
Oh, it's fantastic. No, that's
Yeah.
thank you for that insight, because that probably that leads to who you are. It's you've been around the globe in the northern hemisphere, but also spanning all of that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think great to it's great to experience different things. I think if I were someone that always stayed in the same place and did the same things, I wouldn't even be making art probably. And I think
Sure.
everything I do now just comes from everything I basically experienced in the past, and the books I've read, the music I've listened to, and the people I met, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, and that's what's great about Web3, is that you get to, like we're doing now, you get to meet different people, and you get to have
Yes.
different insights. That's what I love about what we're doing with Claude, with Radar, because I get to talk with different artists, and most of them, they really do, like, I take ideas from them, and
Yeah.
twist them to my own intentions. For example, I talked with Custom Horror, and he gave me some great insight, and tons of amazing artists like Squashua, Claude himself,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, it's great to meet other artists, because actually I know only very few artists here in Cork. So
That's a good point. I have friends who are artists. I've always lived in the same place, but I've traveled. And the friends of mine from high school who we all did our art thing. Some of them are doing murals, some of them are doing like cover art for bands across the world. But for me, finding Web3 and in this space, like I'm going to run through the list. Like you bring a lot of people with you. I got to say that for our first show, I want to say thank you to everyone on the series. But I see that Nick G is in here. Off Grid is on here. Big shout out up north. Larry Blotter, Nudes. I met him out at NFT NYC. And we've got Ricards, maybe pronouncing that in a weird way. And
awesome.
I thought a few
Yeah.
other here. Bensky's in here. It's just you're like people are watching and they understand what you do and what you provide. So thank you for coming to the stage too, because this is also helping to understand who you are. And
Yeah,
RS27's out there. There's a lot of MFers in this stream as well.
lots of legends, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to open up the stream. I want to show your website, and we'll
Yeah.
kind of skim through this. But take a minute. I did see your frames, which are fantastic. Do you make your own frames?
Yeah, actually, I made
Yeah.
those with a colleague. Yeah, and
Good. Good.
that was pretty cool. Pretty cool
But,
work. I really love doing it. Yeah.
yeah, I might take that idea because that's an easy one to pull off. It's a lot cheaper than using oak, which is what I've been doing. And but especially if you can
Yeah,
recycle some pallets, that's a good way to do it.
it's basically pine wood, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, the kind of wood they use to like move shit around, and
Yes.
we have tons of. Actually, I made those back in Corsica in France, and we have
Okay.
like tons of that wood that's just like thrown out.
Yeah.
So, and that was my first exhibition actually, and I just made those those frames out of pine wood, and it was pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's if I come across that. But what other mediums have you? Hey, Tim the Sleeper. Now I got it, Tim. Yeah, that's the hard thing about Twitter, and we get to know each other in Twitter. We know each other in Discord, and we know each other barely in YouTube. So when people log in with their YouTube account, sometimes you get the full name, sometimes you get weird ones. So shout out to everyone in the crowd. We appreciate that. But what mediums have you worked in? Like what you mentioned the photography. Have you spent much time elsewhere?
Essentially, like 80% is probably photography based.
Okay.
I take those photographs, like I said in the beginning, I take those photographs and I modify them like in the real world, like those scrapbook, right?
Yeah.
And those I actually made from a collaboration that I did with a photographer called Biko, actually. And we never published the entire like full A3 pieces for different reasons. So I took macro shots of the piece, of the different pieces of the canvas basically, and I made scrapbook pages out of it. And
gotcha.
And that's really one of my collections where I just like to throw out ideas and do a really fast execution.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I recognize, and this is what's beautiful is that you have an amazing style. Like I can see your work. And I'm like, oh, that's Poe. I get this. Like I can see where that connection is at. So it's fantastic that you're doing this. And I'm actually, yeah, I'm jealous. Like I got to hang out with Tricks, and I have a little bit to do with Old Money, but I'm not. My signature is on the lower left of the new MX bills, but I don't have my own illustration. How did that happen? Like how is it that the MX bills has its own Poe on it?
That's a really long and mysterious story, actually.
Okay.
There's a little bit of shame in that story on my end.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So basically, it all began when I made when I started making the Old Money edits, right?
Yes.
I saw that other artists were making edits of bills, and I was like, hey, I love that art, and why don't I just like make edits of those bills in my own style, right? And so I made a collection called Pimp My Bill. It's basically my Old Money edits, right? And I would take the center of the bill and I would edit it, with my footprint, right? And every time I would post a piece on Twitter, motherfuckers would just like, DM me instantly and ask me for one. And and so I ended up making like, I don't know, 53 or something like that.
Wow.
And that's where like the connection with Old Money kind of began. It began with a motherfucker called Van Wink who gave me a bill. I didn't think much about it because at that time the problem with projects is that 70% of them just came and went. They came, they made their money, and they run. And when I first got that bill, I was like, man, are this Old Money like really here to stay, right? And then with time has proven that they were. And then I eventually, started getting a little bit of FOMO and more FOMO. And then I started, just having fun and doing these edits, right? And eventually it kind of got some attention, got some attention a little bit. And then and then the second part of the story is that I made when I made season 5, a motherfucker who sent me stickers of bills, right? Like literally stickers for Christmas. I was sent from Ada Theist. I was sent about 10 stickers of bills. And when I was making season 5, it was total chaos. I was just like, I don't. It was really a dive into like real chaos, and I was using like anything I had around me basically, and I ended up using like 2 of those stickers and the bills, right? But I didn't even know if I actually knew what I was doing, and when I digitized the pieces of the bill, I was like, oh shit, I felt a little bit wrong, right?
Okay.
Because it's not my work. Even though I transform it, it's still not mine.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good point. There's a lot of conversation to be had about transformative use
yeah,
and especially in an NFT world. So yeah, carry
yeah,
on.
and and so when I released the collection, actually, Trix DM'd me and he said, "You used some of my bills. Now you owe me 200% of the revenue."
Yes.
I was like, I was like, okay, man, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But he was just, I think he was just messing with me, really. So, but yeah, I felt a little bit bad, you know, and then he asked me if he could use a piece of a part of my collage um, that I did in one of the season 5 pieces, and I said, yeah, sure, you know, go right ahead, use whatever you want, you
Wow. Okay.
know. And
Nice.
then like some like magic and mysterious way, he ended up like taking a piece that I put in season 5, a small like piece of the artwork. I mean, it ended up being an illustration in the Old Money MX collection. So that's how
Yeah.
it all happened, you know.
That is a beautiful thing about what I take away from the Web3 space, the Cardano community as a whole, and the creators and the creatives. Like, just do what we can and do it respectfully. And you learn a good lesson, and that's actually a good one to share with everyone, is
Yeah,
to recognize when you're using something. We're easy to get a hold of. You can talk
yeah,
to them and say, hey,
that's what I really learned, and that's what I'll always like keep telling people. If you want to do transformative work, just ask.
yeah,
And I felt pretty bad, you know, and I should have just asked, but I was everything went so fast in some weird way that I
yeah,
just completely forgot, because there was only like one or two pieces with the bills, right? So and and yeah, I guess and I felt bad about it, and then eventually, yeah, it just turned out that, you know, they took something and they put it in their thing, you know. So
yeah.
so
How far is or how deep is the backlog on the Pimp My Bills? Or is that a did I miss that opportunity?
No, I have I have five more bills to make, actually, but I told everybody, you know, I'm just taking my time with it. I'm prioritizing the Genesis collection first, and then whenever I have the time, I do one, and then I eventually I mint it. But I think it's great. It's great to do these things, to do these pieces for motherfuckers. I think it's a great bonus to have if you have a bill, in my opinion. You know.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. That's a good backstory, and everything helps everyone. It may even help somebody feel more comfortable getting into your art, knowing that the conversation at least has been had on the back end, and now you know moving forward there is an actual connection and a
Yeah,
relationship between you all. That's fantastic.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. So
yeah, and
uh,
we're definitely in a world where the PFP thing exists. I'm going through this collection of Pit My Bill, and I recognize people by their PFP in the old money community because I'm like, oh, I know who that is.
you
So
know,
that's
that's fun.
fantastic.
That's nice. So yeah, what I would recommend people is like, don't do what I did. Just always ask if you're going to use anything. Just do, at least ask. Like, it's
Yeah.
the it's really the minimum, and yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
would really recommend projects and artists to do. To not
And
do what I
at the very least, you connect with the other artists in the
yeah
space. And that was how I did it 2 years ago. Whenever I started doing oil paintings of NFTs, like I would reach out to Alessandro and say, "Hey, what's your favorite? I don't have a space bud, but I would like to do a painting of a space bud." And he shared with me the one that he likes, and that was the one that I did. And that creates a connection, and that's kind of what this project's about right now. This conversation is to help bridge these
yeah
gaps. So
that's great.
fantastic.
That's really great. I really appreciate you doing that kind of work, because
Yeah.
it really
I,
gives a ton of value to the
there you go.
space.
Yeah. I don't have a problem, but in case anyone else does watching that is a very fast GIF. Do you want to talk about the sloppy pose at all? You
Yeah,
mentioned it earlier, but that's coming up.
yeah, it's basically a sloppy like, I started doing it around Easter, and
Okay.
I was I was just looking at these people, some people like dressed as rabbits, and a human, like literally humans dressed as rabbits, like in town, doing like, and it made me think about um, the expression "going down a rabbit hole" and Alice in Wonderland and tons of like different things, right? And I wanted to literally take that expression "going down the rabbit hole" and try to do something that I could identify with,
Yeah.
that would be my first PFP project, and something that would be accepted, by the community, something that would be, colorful and creative and basically accepted by, a wider range of people. And
Yeah.
so I took a month and a half, and I shot tons of photographs, walking in the city here in Cork and in Edinburgh as well.
Okay.
I used those photographs to basically, create those little characters, right? And
There's
it's
a
interesting.
lot to it. That is deep. I love that. Like, are you using Photoshop as your tool, or do
Yeah,
you have a different? Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's
Photoshop.
awesome. You're like a ninja on Photoshop. It's fantastic.
And the best part is that most of them were actually. I wanted to be like a community thing. I didn't want to create all the pieces, so I set up a
Okay.
document where I would do streams regularly, and
Really?
actually, some sloppy posts were actually designed by members of my community,
Okay.
and so it was really a community driven project, right? And they would just like watch me stream, and they would say, "Oh, I want those pairs of eyes. I want that pair of ears. I want that armor. I want that mouth." And
Oh, it's
and eventually,
fantastic.
about around 15 or 20% were actually designed by the community itself.
Yeah.
Even though they're still, my pictures, but they were assembled and conceptualized by members of the community, such as, Larry Blotter, Oscar, Baiko, and many others. So I'm really happy about that.
Let's see. There we go. This is the first time in about a year that I've used Melon. I've been paying for it every month, but it's been a minute. I did just put it in the stream, so we do have your website is weirdly behind my logo, so that's weird. But I do have it in the banner in the stream below. But I want to share your art. I want to share who you are and what you're doing, and that's what I'm here for in this thing. Tell me about Radar, RADR. I understand. I just was introduced to this recently, and it's blown my mind that I haven't known about it yet. But let's get the
Yeah,
pitch.
not a lot of people know about Radar. I think we do a
Yet.
we not yet. Yeah, we do a space, we do a space every week. We do a Twitter space every week, and what can I say? It's basically a hashtag, right? It means real artists don't rug, and we asked all of our artist friends to use that hashtag if they were gonna, publish, not publish, but share their work on in the Web3 space, and
Yep.
and it's interesting because tons of like a lot of people started using it,
Yeah.
and it really created this movement where it brought artists together in a place on the blockchain where there's not really any support from, marketplaces for artists. Like there's only one big marketplace, which is JPEG, and I think they're more focused on bigger projects with much larger quantity.
Sure.
And there's not really a space where like Object on Teslas where you could go and discover all the indie artists, right?
Okay.
And so we basically made that hashtag, and it became like an entire thing. Artists started making basically T-shirts out of their designs. Started making like Radar T-shirts, and Claude actually came up with the name. I'm doing it with Claude, and
Okay.
Claude is basically the only monkey PFP you'll ever need in your entire life. And he he created the name, and I just like helped out co-hosting the spaces and interviewing artists in the Twitter space. So basically, it's just that. It's just a hashtag for now, really,
Yeah.
and bringing the all the independent artists together, because they're not being brought together by any by any marketplace here on Cardano.
I'm going to have a conversation with Chatty Nasir here soon too, because I know that with Plutus art, from little conversations, I haven't dug in myself yet. So, but yeah, this is a great initiative. It's community led, community driven, and you guys are pushing it forward. So the more we can get people to understand that hashtag RADR, or for those of us in the Gen X, that's # RADR. Real
Yeah,
artists don't rug, and here we are. So,
here we are,
oh, that's
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really something we both put our hearts in, and we both were really we really wanted to, you know, have like a way to showcase all the different art, because if you just go on Twitter, you don't really if and you're looking for art in the web in the Cardano space, there's
Sure.
no where you could really find it. But if you do search that hashtag, you'll find like many of the independent artists who are actually here on Cardano, who also make excellent work and who deserve to have some sort of recognition, I guess, you know.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Poe, there's a lot. I'm trying to, like, we're already in a niche market as it is, but for me to start this series as Meet the Artist, the qualification is that you're a physical artist first, and
Yeah.
then you're making that transition into the Web3 world, and that is where, if we get too far into the conversation or any longer, I want to ask you word for word. One, what has been your biggest lesson learned making the connection between the physical art and the Web3 world? Every guest I have, I'm going to ask that question, and it's really around that. What's that difference? What's your lesson learned from physical to digital? Where do we go from here?
Well, when I that's a bit of there's no easy answer to that, really. But the
Okay.
way I see it is that when I started looking for galleries in the real world, I probably submitted about 50 to 70 applications, and
Okay.
there's only one who actually got back to me, and just like sending out my work to these different, you know, galleries, and one got back, and I eventually, like, I did an exhibition, right, in this place in Corsica, and
Yeah.
two people
Oh
came
wow.
to to the exhibition, right, and it didn't feel right, you know. And I think what I learned about the Web3 space is that if you're consistent, if you're tenacious, you could definitely it could be a very fertile ground for those kind of people.
Okay.
Only if they're really willing to like be here and stand the test of time, right? And what I learned is that there's extreme opportunity actually in the Web3 space if you're willing to do the marketing, do the work, and create your own brand, your own thing, you know? And whereas in the real world, you're stuck with these middlemen and gatekeepers who basically turn you into a starving artist. I was talking about this with Claude, and he was um, he was in a gallery as well, and they were taking 50% of
Wow.
his revenue, right? So it's
And that's
and
hard to
the
just upcharge, right? You can't just say, well, if they're going to take 50%, I'm going to double the cost so that I get
yeah,
what I need to live. And they're making it on my back. So I feel that.
yeah. So I talked a little bit about this with Claude, and it's really hard to make it, not make it in the sense like monetary sense, but to have a community built around your work in the real world. It's extremely uh, challenging and difficult, and
Yeah.
that's not really the reason why I came to Web3. But
Okay.
the what I recognize is that it can be a real interesting environment because anyone can pretty much create a community around what they're doing, whether you're a project
Sure.
or an artist or whatever. But when I was still living in Corsica, I was in a town that only had about like 20,000 people, and it was and if you didn't have the right connections, well, you weren't going to
Yeah.
go in, you know.
Sure.
So, and I still love doing what I was doing. I just didn't have, in my opinion, I didn't have the right outlet, I guess, in the real world, right? So I was trying different things on the in the internet realms, I guess, and that's where I eventually entered into Web3, and of course in the beginning it was really hard as well because I was putting work like out on a daily basis, and I didn't get any eyeballs in the beginning for like an entire year. You know,
Yeah.
it only came like until now that I started creating this small community around my work who actually like what I do, and I'm extremely like grateful for that, beyond words. You know, really beyond
Yeah.
words, because I think it's really one of the best things about art is that it could bring people together. It's one of the beauties about art, actually, and the fact that I was able to do that in the Web3 and not in the real world makes me just extremely grateful, to be honest. So that's what I learned. I learned a lesson on gratitude, and I learned the lesson to basically just not give up and have that tenacity, that will, to keep doing what you feel is right, even though you need to have a job on the side, basically. You know.
Well, I'm really grateful that you've done it. You've shared your art with me after years of effort. I didn't realize that your exhibition was only seen by 2 live people, but we're in the Web3 space now, and everyone that's watching this video has seen it, and anyone else that follows up, looks at your website, now they can see your art and share with that as well. And that's awesome. I mean, I'm really glad that you're doing it and that you're here right now.
Great. Yeah. And I asked, it's interesting because I met another artist here in Cork, and it's hard to actually bring artists to the Web3 space because
Yeah.
if they're already, I was talking to this photographer and I said, there's huge opportunity in the Web3 space if you have the will to come share your work here, and it's really hard for those people because they don't know where to start. They have to
Right.
learn everything about blockchain and NFTs. It takes time.
Sure.
And they're already making a living in the real world. So why would they spend 2, 3 times more effort and resources to eventually try to build something like new in the Web3? It's really hard. I've tried to bring artists in Cardano, but
Yeah.
it's extremely challenging, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
extremely.
Once I bring up cryptocurrency, that usually ends the conversation or takes it at,
Yeah, you definitely lose your boner right there, man.
yeah.
So,
So when I talk to other artists about this as well, and that's hopefully in the next few months, if I do this once a week with new artists and I bring that on and ask the same questions, we could have a concise pitch from the community on how to onboard other artists. So you mentioned it, but what's the one thing that you would tell your IRL artist friends to encourage them to actually spend that time, spend
yeah,
enough time to add to their website a Web3 element? Or
I I would say that you know um, the grounds of Web3 are very new, and
Mhm.
they could be very fertile if you're willing to put in the effort and to really create a brand with a vision,
Yeah.
and if you're willing to make that effort, then you could eventually make something really special in this space. That's what I would
Yeah.
say.
Fantastic. Oh, that's awesome, man. I tell you what, try and keep it within that half hour, 45-minute range. I appreciate the time that you've already put in, and I don't know if it's getting dark over there yet, but
That's getting dark, yeah.
it's fun. Like that's kind of been my like inspiration to recognize the art that I did at home here where I live just lives at my house. But now you and I both know that we're technically international artists. You talk to anyone in the past, you're like, yeah, I've got art hanging up in Latvia. That's of course, who doesn't? And then your friends out on the street going, where is Latvia? I don't even know what that means. So huge shout out to everybody that's watching. Really, I really appreciate this. I'm making a note here that we're going to have a giveaway of some sort to encourage everybody. And if you're in here still watching, just throw hashtag radar, RADR, in there. I don't need to bump the algorithm. I'm in a spot where I'm happy to put the information out there. I think that I really, really appreciate you breaking the ice with me, Poe. This is, you know, the idea is there. We're gonna reach out to Tamacat. We know that there are the Cardano Art Collective that's out. A fantastic initiative. I heard rumors that round 2 may be coming up. I still have all my pieces from that first round. I didn't get a Poe, but we may.
Yeah. I think people like that are extremely precious, and people like Tom are incredibly precious in the space, because they have that vision that we had, the same vision we had with Claude, to basically, you know, unite the artists to make them, you know, a single force, right?
Yeah.
And because it's really hard if you stay out of the pack, basically, it's not that simple to have the amount of eyeballs that you want on your work, right? So I really appreciate Tama for really everything she did for all of the artists. I always, you know, when she comes on the Radar Spaces, I always say, oh, the mother of all artists is here, you know, so bow down, you know.
Yeah.
And
no, that's great. Yeah, we have I want to say that Tyler with Spaces and I have been talking about this inception. He's doing a magazine for IRL artists that CNFT News, CNFT Mag. There's a few of them that started. He's kicking that back up pretty soon, so we look forward to connecting with that community as well. The Radar community, you guys, I'm so happy to see that, because it is exactly what's needed. Unless you know that there's a Cardano Art Collective or that there is anything, you don't know where to start searching for, whether it's a physical or a digital artist. There's NFT projects that need artists. We are those artists, so let's get to know each other and make this happen.
Exactly, that's the spirit, man. Thanks for having me on. You know, you've done a great job. I loved all the questions, and hopefully, you know, more artists will come and, you know, share their stories and really share like who they are and what they want to say. And I think it's really key to build people around your work, is to really express that, you know. And it's great to have these interviews, because you get to share pretty much everything about what you're trying to do, right? So that's great. Thank you.
And I believe I'm like 98% sure that next Tuesday at some determined time we'll have off grid. You mentioned about getting out of the pack or being in a pack. There's a person who has no pack, but he does in this space, because he's able to get on grid and talk to us and share his beautiful work. There's a good chance that he'll be the next artist that I'll talk to next week. If you guys are on and you want to take part in this, I'm not hard to get a hold of. And I think I've been kind of hitting up Blake CNFT. He's got the Spark Lab, and we may be able, if this takes off and we have this series, regardless of what my YouTube channel does, these will be able to get categorized. And when people look back in the future and say, who was the first one? That's you, Poe. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everything, and good luck with the next ones. It's been great.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.